You'd rather get a text than a phone call. And honestly, even when you see someone calling, there's a split second where you think about just not answering. You're not being rude. You're not antisocial. But something in you recoils at the idea of a conversation you didn't plan for, with no time to think, no ability to edit, just raw real-time pressure to be present and articulate and emotionally available on demand. And here's what nobody tells you. That's not a personality flaw. That's a psychological profile. And science has a lot to say about it. Let's start with what's actually happening in your brain the moment your phone rings unexpectedly. Your amygdala fires. That's the threat detection center. The same part of your brain that once helped your ancestors detect predators in tall grass is now quietly panicking because someone wants to talk to you right now. No warning, no agenda, no exit. Researchers call this telephone anxiety, and it's far more common than anyone admits. A 2019 survey found that 76% of millennials reported anxiety symptoms specifically triggered by unexpected phone calls. Not calls in general, unexpected ones. The ambush of it. But why? Because phone calls demand something texts don't. They demand your full cognitive presence in real time with no revision. When you text, you can think, reconsider, delete, rephrase. You are in control of what leaves your mind and enters the world. On a phone call, your words are live, unedited, non-retractable. For certain brains, that's not communication. That's exposure. Psychologists have a term for this: communication style preference. And it turns out it's deeply tied to how your brain processes information. People who prefer texting tend to score higher in what researchers call need for cognition. They like to think before they respond. They're not slow. They're deliberate. A phone call collapses the gap between thinking and speaking. Texting preserves it. Here's something wild. Studies using neuroimaging show that people who prefer written communication show higher activity in the prefrontal cortex during conversations. That's the part of your brain responsible for planning, reflection, and impulse control. They're not disengaged. They're more engaged. They just need the buffer to do it right. And there's something else going on. People who prefer texting tend to be more sensitive to tone, more hyper-aware of how their words land. They've probably replayed conversations in their head and cringed at something they said too fast, too bluntly, without the nuance they actually meant. Texting gives them the ability to communicate with precision. A phone call takes that away. But here's where it gets interesting. This preference isn't just about anxiety. It's also about autonomy. When you text someone, you're both operating on your own schedule. You respond when you're ready. You're not being pulled out of your focus, your task, your headspace. Researchers in the field of asynchronous communication describe this as reduced cognitive load. You're not splitting attention between listening, thinking, and responding simultaneously. You handle each part separately. And for people who do deep work, who are creative, who go long stretches in complete focus, a phone call isn't just an interruption. It's a full reset. Studies show it can take up to 23 minutes to return to the same level of concentration after an unexpected interruption. To a texter, a missed call isn't avoidance. It's self-preservation. There's a darker layer too. Some people prefer texting because voice carries what words can't always hide. Nervousness, emotion, uncertainty. In text, you control the signal. Your anxiety doesn't bleed through your voice. Your hesitation doesn't show. For people who grew up in environments where vulnerability felt dangerous, where saying the wrong thing had consequences, written communication became the safer container. You could say what you meant without revealing more than you wanted to. This isn't pathological. It's adaptive. The brain learned to communicate in the format that felt safest, and it never fully unlearned it. Now, some people will tell you that texting is ruining real connection, that something is lost without voice, without tone, without the warmth of a human sound. And there's truth in that. Research does show that voice calls create stronger feelings of closeness than text exchanges. A 2021 study from the University of Texas found that people consistently underestimated how connected they'd feel after a phone call and overestimated the awkwardness. So the fear is often bigger than the actual experience. But here's the nuance. Connection is not one size fits all. Plenty of the deepest relationships in the world are built largely in text. Letters, journals passed between people, long emails, late-night messages where someone says the thing they couldn't say out loud. The medium doesn't determine the depth. The intention does. So if you're someone who reaches for the keyboard instead of the phone, you're not emotionally unavailable. You're not avoidant. You're not a bad friend. You're someone whose brain does its best communicating when given space, time, and the ability to say what you actually mean. And in a world that keeps demanding instant, unfiltered, always-on availability, choosing to communicate with intention is quietly radical. The next time someone says, "Just call me," and something in you resists, remember, that resistance has a neuroscience behind it. And that's not something to fix. That's something to understand. If this hit differently than you expected, subscribe. And if you want more of the psychology most people never hear about themselves, click the next video. You'll understand yourself a little better after this one.